Welcome back to Homesteading Around the Mission. I'm Dara, and I'm going to be showing you around our camper, and we're going to be sharing with you some of the space-saving tips we've learned during our time in our tiny space, and we hope it'll be useful for you and your family on your RVing journey too. God bless. We're standing inside now, inside our family's camper. We have a Sunline model camper that is about 16 feet long by 9 feet wide. We are a family of 3, so as you can imagine, that's a pretty small space. So what we're going to share with you today is some ways that we have managed to create extra space inside this small space. And hopefully, if you're considering RV or camper living, say you've got your country property or your homestead farm ready, but you don't yet have the funds to build your structure, it might be a possibility, especially in warmer climates, or if you can winterize your camper, that this kind of living could be an option for you until you can save up the money for your permanent structure. So we're going to show you some tips of what we've done to see if it might be a help for you in your journey. So stay tuned and we'll tell you more. So the first thing I want to show you is that your camper, most likely, unless it's been completely gutted, it might be an older one that's been completely remodeled, likely it's going to have come with factory furniture, factory table, factory couch, and a chair. You don't have to keep all of that like that. Do what works for your family to create the most space possible. What we did in our case is we have a son who's 13 years old and he's homeschooling. And he was going to have to function in this space, both sleeping, living, eating, and homeschooling, all in this area that you can see right here. So we had the factory chair that came with the Sunline model. We actually took it out of the camper, and instead we went and found a ottoman, but no ordinary ottoman. You've probably seen these before. It's one that doubles as a storage unit. As you can see, we do not have room for a bookshelf to store homeschool books, so all of his homeschool materials, his school bag, and all of his books are actually down here in this container. And the beauty of it is, it has double function. That is something in a small space that you really need, things that function dual purpose. So not only is it his homeschool space, but it is also the space where we will sit and eat, or if we happen to have a guest, we would sit and eat here as well. So that's our first tip, is to use furniture, use things that can be dual function in your small space. So the second thing we want to talk about is, how does a family of 3 or 2 or 4 or 5 function in a 16 by 9 camper? Because if you're doing the math, the square footage on a 16 by 9 camper is about 144 square feet. The typical American home doesn't usually start any lower than about 1,000 square feet, sometimes 600 or 700, and that's considered a tiny home, and we're talking 144 square feet. So we wanted to discuss some things that we do in order to be able to function in this kind of limited space. And again, it all comes down to making sure that the things you have, number one, are necessity. You really have to assess in life, do I really need this in the house or do I not need it? Because clutter really becomes the enemy in a small space. One of them is dishes. You know, in typical homes, you would have a dish rack, you'd have counter space. You're not going to have that in a small camper. So you got to get creative. When we first came here, I was convinced that I needed a collapsible dish rack. And now, after we've been in here for a few months, I realized I don't even think that would fit here. So what we do is we keep lots of dish towels, drying towels, and just regular towels. And we basically, when we're done eating, we lay them out on, this is our stove, so we'll lay them out on top of the stove, and if we have a lot, they'll go over to the kitchen table. But this is the kind of thing that once I'm done with it, this doesn't take up space. So when you're in a small space, it's so important. Consider options that aren't really taking up space when they're not in functional use. Another thing that we like to do, since we don't have a dish rack, these are simple little things you can do. We use cups to dry our silverware in. So we don't have a dish rack, pull out a cup. It's got a double purpose. We're going to drink out of the cup. It's not going to be on the counter all the time, but then when we need it, it is out. If you come over here with me, I'll show you our cabinet and a couple of things that have been helpful for us in our storage space, which is bins and racks are definitely a friend when you're living in a small space. So spices are up here. We've got more spices here. Our dishes. Something to note, if you are living in a small space, and this is something that's been very helpful for us moving around in the mission field, years ago someone suggested to me that Corelle dishes are almost unbreakable. So number one, having a child, that was wonderful. But also, you can see, as opposed to like flatware or stoneware, that Corelle dishes are extremely thin. Good note also, the pure white ones are lead-free or proposed to be lead-free, so it's also a healthy option. But I just want to mention that because these have been life-saving for us. As we've moved from place to place, they don't break on us and they fit in small spaces, so that's a blessing. The third thing we want to share with you is different campers have different layouts. In the very smallest units, they typically don't even have a wall separating where the main bed is and the pull-out bed. This is a camper that supposedly sleeps about 4 people. If you can look right here, you can see this is the pull-out bed here. This is where our son sleeps. It's also our couch where we eat here with the kitchen table. But back to this side of the camper, which didn't take us long to get to, this side of the camper is where we would sleep, and it's kind of the master bedroom. You can see there is no wall dividing the one bed from the other. So something that we've done in here that has been really, really helpful for our family in order to have privacy as we have a growing child and we desire some privacy on this side is we have put up a tension rod right here. You can see it going from this cabinet to that cabinet. And we have put up, which this has just been really wonderful, which creates 2 spaces for us. We have put up a curtain which stretches across, so at night our son has this half of the camper all to himself, and it also functions when you are coming in here to take your shower and you're ready to come out. As you can see in this tiny bathroom, there is no room to change your clothes. So we pull this guy, and we also have a clothes changing area, so it's been very helpful. The fourth thing was, we just mentioned it when we were in the kitchen area about that racks and totes and bins are your friend in a small space, but I want to show you specifically, you may be wondering where in this space do we keep our clothes? Where do we keep things like that in such a tiny space? And these little guys have become very, very handy. They have them on Amazon. We got these at Walmart. But it's basically, if you come a little closer, you can see it's a divider that you can pull out. And I've got here, you know, tights, personal things, underwear, socks, things like that. And then you simply just take this whole piece right here and you can put it up here. So when you need to get to things, either you can reach in there and get it, or you can pull it out and get it that way. So that is basically where we keep our clothes. Also, you can see it again in this drawer. It's very, very handy. You can keep your socks in one area, you know, underwear, different things, belts. It helps to organize your drawers in a small space so everything's not just jumbled up together. We're currently washing all our sheets right now, so our bed's a little undressed. But that's another thing just we wanted to share. On that line of thinking, totes and containers, I'll show you here in the bathroom something that's been very helpful to us. We have actually taken these from the Navajo Reservation to Guyana, South America, and now back to the United States. I got these years ago. They are our bathroom totes. We not only use these in our space when it's small, because you can hang them. So, you know, in a space that's small, you're not just going to consider counter space anymore. You're considering 2 places where you might be able to hang things behind doors. Every space is a commodity in a small space. And these are great. You can take them camping, and you've got all your toiletries, so that's wonderful too. So the 5th thing I wanted to share with you is something that I actually spent a little time thinking about when we were moving into this camper. And it is, everybody's going to have trash. What do you do with your trash in a very small space? I'm used to having a large trash can wherever we've lived, and you can't have that in a small camper this size. So in our bathroom, we have a very, very tiny little pail that we got, I think at like the dollar store. It has been helpful for things that are specific to the bathroom that need to go in there. And then in here, we have a very, very small, we just use a very tiny can. But it is helpful when you're living in a small space to put your tiny trash cans inside and make sure you've got a bigger trash can outside. And what it means is you have to be far more intentional about your waste. The less waste you create, the better in a space like this. I'm also going to post down below this video. We don't have it in here. We didn't end up doing any compost during our time in the camper since we've been in here. But I found on Amazon a really nice countertop, which wouldn't take up too much space, little composting bucket that has a charcoal filter to keep the sour gnats out. So that is really helpful. And I also had found, and we didn't purchase it, but I think it would be helpful depending on your camper space, is they have over the door hanging trash cans so that you could either put your scraps from your meal in there, or your trash. If you had a cabinet large enough, you could put your trash can on the inside. And that brings me to the 6th point we want to share, which is, where do we store our laundry? You know, you don't see dirty laundry everywhere. Again, clutter is truly your enemy in a small space, and if there's anybody watching from tiny home living, or you live in a tiny home, you understand that clutter is your enemy. So we got to looking around in our camper thinking, where are we going to keep laundry? We actually keep our laundry right in here. Now normally I don't have our laundry bag. I'm going to try to post that a little later, a picture of it, but we have a laundry bag. We do not even have enough space currently to have a laundry basket. My point is, the things that you normally have in a house, get creative. You may have to do different in a smaller space like this. And the laundry bag is wonderful because we actually are doing our laundry, obviously not in the camper. We do not have washer and dryer, so we're having to tote it. So it's a large bag that we can kind of throw over our back and take to do laundry. Now one more thing, and probably the final thing I want to mention, is we have been very blessed and fortunate during our time here in the camper that we have another space that we are storing a lot of our belongings, like crock pots or our Vitamix, different things that we're not using every single day. And we keep these in storage totes, like 20-gallon, 50-gallon storage totes. But they are not obviously inside this camper. If we had to keep all of that in here, I'm not sure that we could. So that's something to consider. If you're going to live in an RV or a camper on your property, also consider possibly investing in a storage shed that you can keep things in and you're not feeling overwhelmed in your space, but you have a little extra room to move around. I'll even show you a picture of something that we had thought we were going to use here, which is a large carport shed which had a lean-to on it, and the plan originally was we were going to build onto that lean-to and build in 2 rooms that would function as living space and park the camper inside. So the camper would house everything like shower, toilet, but then we'd have more living space that we could move around in and heat. And then we would kind of insulate the whole thing. I'll put some examples of that in pictures so you can see that as an option for your family as well. Those are just some simple tips. It wasn't an awful lot, but it sure has been very helpful for our family as we have been moving around in here and trying to make this space workable for us, and it's actually been a really good experience. But again, it took some creativity. It will for you too. We hope that these ideas spark something for you to help your space more livable. Until next time, if you liked what you saw, join us in the conversation here, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.